Now in this lesson, you're ready to cut your fabric out. So we've got to look at the layout first of all. And it's your opportunity to mix and match your patterns and your colors and decide what you want where on your skirt. And remember that I'm starting with the large black print, and then I've got the smaller black print. And because I want this large black print in a specific place in my body, what I decided to do was to take the selvage edges of the small print and just pin them together with the selvage edges of the large print. And that way everything's nice and even, and I've smoothed it all out on the other side of my cutting surface here. And so I've got that all nicely laid down. Now we have to take a look at our pattern pieces. There's a front, and let's see, that says back, and this one says back, so those are the two back pieces. And this one is the front, and this one says cut one on the fold, so I know that's the center of my pattern, and I'm going to do that in solid black, so it's not going to belong here. And then this one says center back panel, and I'm doing that in black. So I'm going to take those two pieces and remove them. Then I have to look at my front panel, and my front panel, let's see here, this is going to go like this. Here's my double notch, and it's going to be on my body right here. That's the side seam. And this single notch is the princess seam coming down this way. And this is the piece on my left-hand side that I wanted to be my larger black print. So that means I want to have this right side face up. So I've got my fabric laying in the correct direction with my large print face up. Now also something just as a note, when I purchased the black print, the large one, I did get about 2.5 yards of it because I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it. When I bought the small black print, I only bought 1 yard because I figured that it would be an inset or an accent for some other project. So that's why, again, a good idea to get those two colors pinned together, and I know exactly how much of that small print that I've got, and fortunately I'm not going to need any more than that. So this pattern piece, the side front panel, says cut 2, and it's going to go right in here, and I need to make sure that the grain line is totally parallel to the selvage edge. So that's going to be one of my first steps here, is to measure, and I'll measure to where the selvage is totally white and then the pattern begins. And we can make this at about 3 inches. I usually do a pretty conservative layout. Because I bought so much of this large black print, I will be able to likely get something else out of it, maybe a short sleeve blouse. So I'm going to put a pattern weight there, and then I need to make sure that this is 3 inches too, so that the grain line is totally parallel to the selvage edge. And just to make sure I don't shift that off, I'm going to put pins at both ends of the grain line marking, like that. Okay, then this is my side back panel, and I'm not as fussy about what side gets the large black print or the small black and white print. So I'm just going to lay that down right here, and this is another one that I need to make sure that the grain line is totally parallel. And I'll bring this grain line out to 12 inches right there and put a pattern weight there. And so from the edge of the selvage down here, this also needs to be 12 inches. And there it is heading right down there at 12 inches. And I'll put another little pattern weight there. And I actually am going to pin this as well. And then I'll lay a few more pattern weights down. Now I have one more piece that I'm going to need to cut out, and that's this patch pocket. But because I wanted to do that in the small black and white print, I'm going to cut that out afterward. So I'll just tuck that pattern piece down there as well. Now I'm going to add a few more pattern weights here, and let's see, that looks like that's pretty good in here. Now I typically use a rotary cutter for cutting anything, particularly something like this cotton, and this will be fine. I know a lot of you are way more comfortable using shears. Whichever you are most comfortable with is absolutely fine. The thing about using shears is that when you come in, you don't want to be lifting up your fabric. You want to keep the shears down as close to the table and the fabric as close to the table as possible, because the more you lift up, the more tendency for the pattern to actually shift off. And we don't want to have that happen. You know what? I need to have my half eyes on here to make sure. I've trimmed the pattern piece out so that I'm right at the 5/8 inch line, and I'm going to carefully cut around the exterior of the pattern. It's hard to see my notches, but there's a single notch there, and so I'm just going to skip over the notch, and there's another notch there, and I almost missed that one because it's a little bit on the dark side, and so is the fabric. And then I'll cut the hem edge out, and then I'll come down the side, and the side has the double notch, and I'll skip over that because I'm going to come back to my notches, and I'm going to do them with the fabric shears. Now, I did cut that. And sometimes I miss little fibers, and that's okay. So I'll just go through and make sure that everything is nicely cut here. And something, did I not cut that? It looks like I didn't cut this top part because I need to cut it again. And then I need to do the notch right here, and this is all cut. But you know what? I think I also need to change the blade in my rotary cutter because there's way too many edges here that need a little clipping. So let me just go around that notch manually. And let's see what happened on the hem edge. All right, and I've got another little catch right there. And then I need to get this double notch cut out right here, and that's the side seam. And I must have missed the second layer. Okay, so that's got that done, and I'm just carefully checking, and I want to get my pins out of that, so I'll just take it and move it out of the way for right now. So that did the side front panel, and I'll just move those like this because I'll be using them again. I'm going to leave my pins in here, and I definitely want to make sure that I don't get mixed up with my side front panel and my side back panel. So I'm going to leave the pins on the fabric. And what am I caught to? Gosh darn it. Let's have a little bit of a nip right there. All right, so now I've got the big pattern for there and the small pattern for the other side. So I'll just fold this and cut out the other side right here. And I think, since I'm having so much difficulty with that rotary cutter, that I'm just going to go ahead and cut this. And you can see what I'm doing here when I'm cutting. I'm just not lifting up the fabric. And it's because I don't want anything to shift. And you have to remember, I only weighted my pattern down with weights. I don't have pins in it. So everything needs to stay as smooth and as flat to the table as possible. And also be really careful when you're cutting that you maintain 5/8 and that you don't wander off and cut inside the seam allowance or way outside of it, because changing the width of the seam allowance obviously can change the way anything's going to fit. So let's remove that so that I can finish off this piece right here. So try as I might, the fabric's still lifting up, and that's really why I do like the rotary cutter better. But until I change the blade out, I think I'll just live with my shears. Okay, so now that completes that portion, and now there's my back panels as well. One large black print and one small black print. Now I have one more piece that I want to do while I'm here with this fabric, and it is the pocket piece. I've got one more pin holding this together. Actually, I've got 2 pins there holding it together. And so what have I got left here is this chunk right here and a small piece there. Now, keeping in mind, let me grab my pattern piece for my pocket. This patch pocket needs to go right side face up in this orientation. So I'm going to take this fabric and lay it out right here. I only need one patch pocket, and we'll put this right here. And I do need to make sure that this is parallel to the selvage. So let's make it exactly 5 inches. Which is right there. And this is almost, there's 5 inches right there. And I'll just put a pin down in this one. And I'm going to put a pin up in this corner because actually, you know, my rotary cutter should be fine with this one because it's only a thin single layer. So let's give that rotary cutter a try. And I've got a single notch right here and a double notch over here, and I don't want to cut them off. So I'm going to go carefully around that notch. In fact, I'll stop at the beginning of the notch, and I will trim that out with my shears. Aha, so it didn't mind the single layer, it just didn't like double layers. Okay, and down this side. And I will finish this off. The double notch right there. And the single notch right there. And that is going to be my pocket piece to go right here. Okay, we'll continue on with the black fabric as soon as I bring that over to the cutting table. So now we're going on to the last pattern pieces that I need to cut out, and that's what I'm going to cut out of the black fabric. And my black fabric was actually 44 inches wide. So to do a traditional layout, which is the fold on one side and the selvages on the other, meant that there was going to be a lot of wastage in there because my pieces are pretty small. So this is just another little tip for you, is that if you want to conserve fabric, you can just create a new fold, but you have to make sure that your selvage edge is parallel to your folded edge. And so you can refold your fabric and from the fold to the selvage is 13 inches up there, and it is 13 inches down here. So I know I don't have the grain twisted. And then the pieces that I'm going to be cutting out here are the center front that's on the fold of the fabric, so it'll go there. And then the center back is going to go in right in this position, and I need to make sure that that grain line is parallel to the selvage. And then I have my waistband pattern piece, which I'll cut off the folded fabric because I only need one of it anyway. So I can see that that's parallel right now to the selvage edge. There's not very much to measure there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that pinned in place. And then if you want to be on the safe side, you can measure it, but I can tell by looking at it that that's totally parallel to that selvage edge. This one, I'm going to just use some pattern weights and put down and hold it in place like this. And then, you know what? I don't want to lose that afterward, meaning lose the pattern piece off of the cut strip. So I'm just going to put a couple pins in there as well. So that's right on the fold. But the one piece that I am going to measure is the center back panel. And that's 5 inches on that end and 5 inches on this end. So that was pretty good eyeballing it as well. So we'll put a pin there. I will put a pin at this end. And now I'm going to add some more pattern weights in here. And I went and got another rotary cutter, so hopefully this one is going to be a little bit better in terms of cutting the double layer. So that looks a little bit better there. And I'm coming up to a single notch. So I'll stop, and I will go around that with my shears. And I'm coming up to another single notch. This is the princess seam that we drew. And then the hem level. And let me get these notches trimmed out. And I don't think there's any little catches there. And this single notch right there. Whoops, right at the hem. All right, so let me remove that piece. So that was the center front panel. And now all my little shreds of paper here, I'll just move them out of the way. So we'll do the back panel, center back panel. And this is the center back right here. That's why there's no notches on it. And that completes the center back panel. We can take that one away. I'll trim, oops, that's already cut. Let's get rid of that. And the last piece that I need to do is this single piece right here for the waistband. And it was already lined up with the grain line, so we're good there. Nothing is shifted. And I'm ready to cut this one out. I will put a couple of pattern weights down to hold that in position. Okay, and that completes the waistband for the skirt. And then the very last piece that can be cut at this point in time if you want to, or you can wait till you get closer to it in the construction of the skirt, is the trim piece that's going to go around the hemline. And maybe when we get to that point, we might decide we don't want the trim piece there. So I'm going to leave it at this point in time. I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and get your fabric pieces coordinated and all cut out. And you can see that there is no marking to do. So in the next lesson, we're going to start sewing this all together. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you have, I invite you to join the Sherpa Designs community if you haven't already. And you can do that in 3 easy steps. Number 1, make sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is SureFit Designs. Secondly, make sure to sign up for our newsletter list. And you can do that by going to surefitdesigns.com. And there are free gifts to get you started. And if you happen to be a Facebook fan, we do have a private group. Go to facebook.com/groups/SureFitDesigns. Request to join. Make sure you answer the 3 questions and I'll approve you. Thanks so much for watching.